Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about our Master of Professional Studies in Food Business. Today, we're going to be hosting a current student and alumni chat, which is going to focus exclusively on our Masters of Professional Studies in Food Business. My name is Robert Tremblay. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at the Culinary Institute of America, as well as a 2010 graduate. And I'm going to be joined today by some very special co-hosts, and we'll be introducing them in just a few minutes. But I just want to go over a few housekeeping items before we begin our event tonight. Ultimately, we're going to be focusing today, our discussion is going to really focus on our Masters of Food Business and giving you an exclusive understanding of just what it's like to be a student in the program and hear directly from people that are in the program and people that have graduated from the program. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and compiled some of the most frequently asked questions that we get regarding the program, and we're going to dive right into them with our panel of co-hosts this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our special guests. And first and foremost is Alyssa Irwin, who is a current student and is getting ready to graduate in just a few short months. So welcome, Alyssa. And then Jacob Murata, who is a 2022 graduate from the program, has also joined us this evening. So thank you both so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know balancing work and your education and beyond that can be a big piece of the puzzle. So I'm really excited that you're both here and can't wait to get into our discussion tonight. So we'll start with you, Alyssa. If you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself, tell us where you're from, what you currently do for work, and a little bit about what brought you to our program.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from Waunakee, Wisconsin, a nice little town out here. And currently I work in catering sales. I'm a catering sales assistant. So I work with clients every day. It's a lot of fun. I love people. What really brought me to the master's program is I graduated from the Culinary Institute with my associate's degree and my bachelor's degree. And once they announced the master's program, I was actually in school once this was up and running on its feet. And I couldn't say no. So I took a 2-year break, felt like I was missing that piece. And then came back. I love the school and love the program so far. So I just had to come back at some point.
That's great. And Alyssa is actually one of our student ambassadors. So she's well-versed in answering questions about our program. So next, Jacob, welcome to our chat tonight. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you're currently doing?
Of course. Thank you very much for having me, Robert. My name's Jacob Murata, and I am from the Bay Area, a smaller town in the Mid-Peninsula called San Mateo. And I was actually teaching when, the world started shutting down. And as a lot of people in education know, the way forward is through advanced degrees. So I started looking out there for degrees that were online, and I found this wonderful, wonderful program and joined, and it actually has kind of set me off on a whole new trajectory where I'm currently opening up a cafe with my sister. So the course has definitely had a huge impact on my life, and I'm happy to talk about it.
That's wonderful. Very excited to hear that, and really just excited to dive into our questions. And we'll get started and begin with our first main question. So this is definitely a question that students pertains to what students want to know about, and that's what are they going to experience not only during their first year but their second year, which we'll get to. But we'll start with the first year first. What can students expect going through their first year of the master's program, and what courses left the biggest impact on each of you independently? So we'll start with you, Jacob. If you could share a little bit about what you experienced in terms of the classes for your first year, and what were some of your favorite moments?
Yeah, I would be glad to. The first year, I view it as kind of a large overview of some very, very hard to tackle concepts in the food world. So some of the courses are the science of food systems, which is a great overview of looking at food systems and how they're built and where we currently are and how we can make them better, to a large overview of business and trying to, get down some core business concepts in a semester. The course that had the biggest impact for me, I would say, is a course called Design Thinking for Food, which was taught by Professor Kylie Wawak. And that has changed my mind in how to approach problem solving. Every week we're learning a new step in this process for learning how to solve problems, not just in the food space. That's where we're tackling it in the course, but just problems that you encounter every day and how to find really in-tune solutions for them. So that is what I kind of took away from the first year overall.
That's wonderful. And one thing I will add is that the first year for this program actually begins with the first residency. So one of the great things about this master's degree program is that it's primarily online, but it also includes some in-person components. So I know, Jacob, you were starting in 2020 in the middle of COVID, which made things a little bit difficult for in-person, which you experienced your first residency virtually. But moving forward, we've done all of our residencies in person, which has been a great opportunity for students to connect. And that's really sets the tone for the start of the year, is that first residency, which is done out at our campus in California. And then, for you, Alyssa, I know that you got to experience that first residency. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? And then we can get into, a little bit of what you experienced in the rest of the year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My first residency was very lucky to go out to the California campus, and I had never been to the West Coast ever in my life. I've been a Midwest and East Coast girl since I was raised, so I was very excited. You have a lot of opportunity to meet the professors that you're working with, as many in person as they can get, sometimes virtually, because our professors do work. A lot of them work outside of just doing, the master's program with us, which is incredible. But you really get to build those bonds, and that first residency allows you to meet all of the students you're going to be going through this with. And I can say from personal experience, I am in contact with them every single day. So It really, it sets the tone for your entire program. And it's just a blast. You get free time. I visited, I don't know how many wineries. And it was a blast. You get to see the campus and you get to really be part of it. And it was a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. That is definitely a consistent theme that I hear from students about, the interpersonal connection being so valuable throughout the whole program, that it's not just, you on an island, that it's you interacting with a cohort of learners that, are really driving towards a lot of the same goals, and that it really impacts everyone. Can you talk a little bit about, what, some of your favorite classes were during that first year and what they kind of entailed?
Yeah, so Jacob did a very good job going over kind of the basis of it. I think the only class he didn't mention was ethical leadership. A phenomenal class.
Yeah.
Go through so much, everything from issues in race to issues in gender to just general business issues, period. And that's a really phenomenal class. But I do have to agree that design thinking changed the way I viewed the industry and really reset my path with what I want to do with my future, and made the biggest decision for me I was originally in restaurant track, and that is what switched my mind to CPG. And I am thrilled with it. It was an incredible class. You work in teams, you get to do partner work, which I think is the only course that I have done partner work in at all in this master's. And it was quite an experience. You learn so much and you grow so much in that class. And the first few classes, you're going to pull your hair out a little bit, because it's a way none of us have ever thought before. And it's really incredible.
That's wonderful, and I think that's a profound thing to kind of have, doing a 360 like that. Our next question deals with the second year, and we'll talk a little bit about the tracks. But I've always sort of described the first year as sort of larger concepts of food business theory that are kind of always being filtered through the lens of the food industry. And so, does that kind of resonate true for you both in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Great.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's a dynamic way to begin the program. And I will say that during the first year, everybody takes the same classes. So the entire cohort is engaged taking each of the classes that they take. I'll just run through the list of the courses during the first year. It's divided up into two 15-week semesters. So the first semester in the fall will include ethical leadership in the food business. They go into science and food systems. Then the second semester begins with design thinking for food, which we've heard a lot about. So a very important part of the program. And then lastly, business fundamentals. So, really kind of harping on the bigger concepts of food business theory that really set the tone for the second year of the program. So we'll dive into that question. So kind of stemming off of the first one, what can students expect during that second year of the program? And let's talk a little bit about the program tracks. I'll kind of set the tone, kind of giving a rough overview that during the second year, as we kind of extend beyond, the broader concepts of food business, getting into that second year, students are going to actually elect to focus on one of three tracks. I know for Alyssa and Jacob, you're familiar with the two tracks, one being restaurant focus track and restaurant development tracks. We also have a individually packaged products track or product development track. And then launching this fall, we're actually going to be offering a new track, which is focused in organizational leadership. So a little bit broader area of things, a more general track, if you will, for people that don't necessarily want to open up a specific business or design a specific product necessarily. So a little bit of flexibility there, but I know with both of you, you had the opportunity to participate in the product track. So tell us, Jacob, a little bit about your first year in your second year in the program, and some of your favorite courses from there.
Yeah, strangely enough, even though I'm working on a cafe, I was in the food product track, and it actually has become an integral part of the business plan for the cafe. So I can talk about that a little bit later. But the second year, I like to think of it as a lot of refinement. You really start diving deep into what your concept is going to be for your capstone, and it will wildly change, some more than others, but as you keep putting these ideas out there and keep working in your track, no matter what it be, you're getting feedback from professors who are great leaders in the industry, and your fellow classmates who are really, and sometimes you have to really be able to take critique for the class, because sometimes they're picking holes and, might be an area where you don't want them to notice. You're trying to cover up, oh, I haven't thought about that yet. But it really makes you come out going into the capstone with the strongest idea possible. So you're ready to build on that. And that's kind of how I view the second year.
That's great. Alyssa, if you can kind of dive into, your experience in the program during the second year.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Jacob said, it really narrows in on what you want to do and really helps you to assess who you are as a business leader, a business professional. A lot of what this is your story. We really hammer in that brand story and developing yourself as a leader and as an owner of a company. And you start to think of things that you never noticed when you look at a product on a shelf. And it's pretty incredible. And what Jacob said about your cohort picking apart the things that you post, it's in the best way possible. And I can't tell you how many times I've had one of my cohorts post, here's a link, Alyssa, read this, you'll love this, this will help you. And I have put almost every one of those links into an assignment or into my product in some way, and it really helps you to develop these skills. And the classes really focus in on what you're doing and where it's trying to drive you next, so that way you can succeed post this program.
That I think is a really important thing to keep in mind. It's really all about driving towards those goals and really kind of building on, what you've learned in your previous classes, your previous year, and even for a lot of cases, your previous experience and, what you're bringing to the table and, who you are and what's going to, make your business special. So I think that's an important element to consider in the whole process. Can you talk a little bit about, the selection process? So like, when did you have to have your track chosen by? Like, did you have to know, obviously, coming into the program, I think we're looking, Alyssa, at the restaurant track potentially, but what is the time frame for when you start the program to when you have to nail down your track for the second year?
Yeah, for mine specifically, we had students changing at the second residency still. You got through that second residency, which was really great because you've already been assigned your track. And at that second residency, you meet the professors for the next courses. And listening to them talk about the classes and what you're going to get out of it actually switched a lot of students' minds in my class. You could hear audibly the O's and the O, just learning what was more, you have this idea in your head when you start this program, and maybe it's not exactly what you thought was going to be the track you end up on, and getting to meet those professors and hear those explanations helps students to be like, oh, what I'm trying to do is nothing like what this track is trying to do. I need to be doing this, and these courses are going to help me more. So I think we had a week or two post our second residency.
Okay.
You had to be solidified. And that second residency is, it's not a long break before you're back into the classes. So
right.
You get pretty close to that start date for your second year to make a decision.
That's great. I think that really helps understand how much growth you can go through over the course of that first year of the program. That, while, we through the application process want to have some idea of what your goals are, and, having that set, that, prize set in mind, it really has the ability to flex, the flexibility to change as you go through and you grow into the program. So Jacob, talk a little bit about, how, your program track is, a little bit further on how it's, improved your understanding for your current business and, where you're taking things.
Yeah, so I was actually very close to one of the students who switched during the second residency. I came in on the food product track. However, my idea fell in kind of a gray area because it was the idea of a specialty store, a specialty food store. And the program director, Kathy Jordan, actually took me aside after one of our virtual residency meetings and said, explain your idea to me. Let's make sure you're on the right track, literally like in the right track and program. And so once I talked to her, she was like, okay, food product seems to make sense for you. But so actually the specialty store, I've been able to boil down to a consumer packaged good that's going to be a core piece of the cafe. It's actually a tea brand. And so the idea is to use the cafe space to get this tea brand launched, get people in the community knowing it. We want to serve it for some tea services throughout the weeks, and then hopefully that can be a stepping stone to get to the fully fledged specialty tea store idea. So even though I was focused in the food product section, you learn so much about how to refine your ideas and how to take feedback and put them all together into one big project, that I was able to use so much of what I've learned in this cafe space that hopefully will be open very soon.
That's great. Well, we'll jump into the Capstone project in a little bit, but that was fantastic. Really helps give a real foundation and understanding for, what our students will experience during their first year and their second year. So really important elements for those online classes. So our third question, and this is probably the most frequently asked question that I receive in admissions, is what is a typical week like for online courses, and really how rigorous is the coursework? So Alyssa, if you want to, share your experience with that. I mean, you're in the midst of it now, and, talking about, what your weeks have been like.
Yeah, absolutely. I just finished my second year, so all I have left is the capstone and then graduation, which is really exciting. But these classes, it kind of depends, of course, on the class. You do have classes, design thinking is much more involved, but it's physically involved. It's a lot of meeting with interviewees and meeting with your cohorts, and you have a lot more that's physically involved, and you're going to have 800 Post-it notes everywhere. And you have classes like manufacturing and supply chains that, again, are going to be more involved, and That class partners with sales, which is brilliant. They really work hand in hand. And I think having manufacturing makes sales more manageable. I want to say it's probably about, 10 to 15 hours per course, I would say a week, just depending on the week. Could be less than that. Rarely do I think it ever goes past 15 hours each course in a week. Some weeks you have 2 assignments, some weeks you have 4. On the weeks you'll have 4 assignments, though. It'll be a small assignment that's an interactive activity submission, and then maybe a field work assignment or a case study. So they really do a good job at balancing this out for students. But the coursework is no joke. It's very serious. You're working towards a goal, and all of these professors are professionals. So they want you to meet that goal. So it's really an incredible program.
That's wonderful. And Jacob, speaking to that, talking a little bit about a little bit more detail on, what the homework assignments are like, what is like the required readings like? Are there recorded lectures? Is it, just, logging in on your Moodle and the rest is up to you? Or is there, kind of a constant interface with your professor over the course of the week and even your other classmates?
Yeah, there, as Alyssa so greatly put it, you are in communication with your cohort and classmates every single day, discussing assignments, discussing what's coming up, making sure everyone's on track. There's a lot of great accountability where people are checking in with each other, and just you have a ton of support from your classmates. In terms of getting into the actual coursework, it is very, very nicely laid out. As someone who is a former educator, and that was one thing I always made sure was done well for my students. There's, as you said, there's readings, there's lecture videos, but they are all there for you and laid out, and your professors are available. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but your professors are very, very well available for feedback, questions, talking about previous assignments or upcoming assignments. One thing that I wrote down, and I have it in a big capital letters, is organization is key. Finding a system, and it's not going to be the same for everyone, but finding a system where you can kind of take bites out of the coursework for the week, like finding those times, like maybe every Wednesday evening you can take an hour or two to review a lecture or get some reading done, or maybe that's when you're going to start assignment A. And that is the biggest thing I took away, is making sure that you can fit it in. It doesn't all need to be done in one sitting. Sometimes I did find myself on those unfortunate weeks where you're like, oh gosh, didn't meet my goals for the week. But making sure you do have that organizational system so you can keep up with everything will definitely help and keep from any burnout happening.
No, that's definitely a helpful, piece of advice. I've heard from students that, especially, during the first year, it's getting your feet wet and really learning, what makes you successful in the program. That, you come in with, an initial game plan, so to speak, but that it evolves as life evolves. And how was for you, Jacob, managing, were you working full time while going through the program? What was that balance like for you? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was teaching while going through, I believe, the first year of the program. And then I was working on this grand new adventure of mine. So I actually got to see both sides of it pretty clearly. And I actually found myself to be a little better organized when I was teaching, because, you kind of have those set hours, and then you have, your off time when I could fit things in. And even though I was, working in education, it was an extra load, but it wasn't overbearing at all. Even with student assignments needing to be graded and, having those deadlines, everything was very, very achievable. And then when coming out working for my own, once those hours are off, everything kind of gets a little more difficult.
Definitely.
So.
And Alyssa, you're living that life, or at least got to the end of your online classes recently. How has the balance been for you between work and the schoolwork?
Yeah, so actually my first year in the program, I didn't work. I had moved from New Jersey back to Wisconsin. It didn't work and missed it. So once I finished my first year, had to go back, and it was really a great program to be able to not only have school work balance, but school work life balance. You can really make what you can out of it. So I often would do, I work a typical Monday to Friday. I work occasional weekends and some late nights, but I would typically take Sunday as my main homework day. For us, homework is due Monday nights. I would take Sunday as my main homework day, and it was always a lot easier if I had done work throughout the week. As Jacob had said, you know, you have those weeks every once in a while where everything catches you and you're doing all of it and trying to rush through it. But it was always easier if you could take that time to do bits and pieces here and there. And you find your rhythm, you find your groove. I am a pen and paper girl. I live out of a paper organizer. So that has been my largest asset ever. I did checklists every single week, and checking things off kept you motivated as well. So it's really individual and depends on the person.
That's great. Yeah, it's definitely a learning process for everybody involved. It's education first and foremost. You know, it seems like, you know, it's a graduate program and it's elevated in so many ways, but at the end of the day, it's learning. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for both of your feedback there. So we'll jump into question 4. So this is going to be kind of, you know, for Jacob, your experience was a little bit different than Alyssa. So we'll start with you, Alyssa, in terms of, you know, talking about the residencies. I'll give sort of a little intro to that element. Ultimately, this program has a total of 3 short in-person residencies. So each residency is only about a week long, and each residency is spread throughout the program. So as I mentioned before, the first residency is held at our campus in California at the very start of the program. The second 2 residencies are both done at our campus in New York, and located in Hyde Park, which is in the middle of the Hudson Valley, really a very beautiful region of the country. And the second one is held at the very end of the first academic year of the program, so usually in June of that year. And that will be during our Menus of Change conference. So that's really one of our more sought after conferences that we host every year. Really brings together some of the most dynamic leaders in the food industry to talk about the ongoing trends in the industry. And then the third and final residency will be at the conclusion of the program, where students come together for the presentations of their capstone projects, which we'll be talking about in just a couple minutes, and then ultimately graduation. So, you know, Alyssa, you know, we talked a little bit about the first residency, but talk a little bit about the second residency and what your experience was like, you know, coming to campus for that conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wow. First and foremost, it was unbelievable. And I went to school at CIA. Our program to finish both degrees was about 3 years, less, I think, a month or 2. And I had been there for, I think, 3 menus of change and had never once attended. And so getting to go as a master's student and be in those rooms where these big conversations happen about the future of our world and our food systems, and going post-COVID was an unbelievable experience. You know, I took away so much leaving that, and you're going to go back to work and you're going to look at everyone and you're going to go, some changes can be made.
Yep.
You know, there's some things that we can fix. But they love it. You know, it was a blast. And you go to Menus of Change. That's predominantly what your residency is going to all of those different meetings and seminars. And you get to pick a couple of them, which is really exciting. They have breakout sessions, and you get to pick and register for what breakout sessions you want to go to. And aside from Menus of Change, again, you're meeting faculty for the next year. You're solidifying your track. You're getting to figure out if there are any questions you have moving forward for the rest of your program. They do breakfast every morning. We do some team dinners. You get the opportunity to have some nights to yourselves, so you can spend time with the people that are holding each other's hands the whole way through this program. It's really one of the most incredible weeks I have had on the CIA campus in my entire time as a student there.
That's fantastic. And Jacob, I know that you had a variation of the experience of menus of change. Unfortunately, in
Mhm.
2021, when Jacob's second residency took place, we were still under COVID law, we'll call it, and
Yeah.
we held that conference virtually. But Jacob, did you get to experience some of those same feels from the speakers that you got to witness for that?
Oh my, yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness, it was just amazing being able to see some of the greats in the industry talking about our movement forward, especially, 2021 was an interesting time because, a lot of places had shut down, a lot of places had also survived. And it was, what do we do in this state of, standing in between? But it overall was just amazing. And both residencies, even though they were virtual, were just so much fun.
Mhm.
I can't imagine them being in person because, like, raising the level to that much. But the CIA did such a good job of still making sure we were a team, we knew one another, and that we met our faculty, of course, but also that we had a lot of fun. So.
That's a special thing, and I think you
Mhm.
both touched on just being a part of this program, kind of, well, Jacob going through COVID, and then coming out of COVID, and Alyssa on the outskirts of COVID. It's this program matters for so many reasons because it's cultivating new ideas in a new food world, and the food industry did not go unblemished over the course of COVID, as we all know. And I've always I'm a graduate from the undergraduate programs myself from CIA, and I love this industry with all of my heart, and I know it's a phoenix and it rises like from the ashes. And it's people like you that are coming to this program to invest in that future that really really matter, and developing new business ideas that are being done in a more sustainable way and done the right way, I think is a really important piece of everything. So I'm glad that you both got to experience the thrill of menus of change on some level. And if you could, Jacob, talk a little bit about the third residency. How did you get to come to campus for graduation and do all that?
Yes, we were very fortunate being able to have an in-person graduation. I believe it was maybe only the second of the program in
Yep.
total.
Yep.
So yeah, so it was, I think, because of the capstone projects which I think we'll talk about very shortly. There was a lot of excitement being able to be with one another, and um, that was just fun being to finally be in person with everyone. But I also think there was a lot, and I think Alyssa will see what I mean. There was a lot of tension because everyone's a little hyped up for these presentations and everything else. So there's a weird dichotomy there. And then, oh, finally, once, you're done with all the work, just
Yep.
being able to breathe that huge sigh of relief after 2 years,
Yeah.
and get to go and graduate with these people that, like Alyssa said, have been holding your hand through this program is so much fun. So,
That's awesome. I love all that. That just
yeah.
gives me all the feels.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect segue to kind of talking about the capstone projects, and really what sort of business concepts are you developing, and what have you seen from other students? And we'll start with Jacob. I know you've talked about the business that you're kind of working into and establishing it, but talk about the capstone project itself, and what went into that process, and how big of an impact did the online curriculum have in supporting you to develop your capstone?
Yeah, I would say that the online curriculum had the biggest impact in the Capstone project. And although your idea changes, and I have some examples of how that happens. Every course, and it's not like, what's your capstone? What are you working on towards your capstone? But every course helps build up a piece, like a Lego or a building block of your mind, how you're going to view your capstone, and then ultimately what that final project is going to be. And so the capstone overall entails just every class that you do, lots of thought and research into what area you want to make a big impact or change in. And then on the practical side, You're finding a committee of experts in your particular field to come on board. And you're really building towards what's called the final business playbook, where you put all of these big ideas and thoughts together into a single document, and then finally a presentation to your to faculty and to your friends and to your cohort. So yeah.
So what was your initial your initial capstone project pitch, I guess? Because you sort of announced that at the second residency, correct?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to do something in the tea space, but nothing, I've always loved tea, and people knew me as the tea guy, which I don't know if that's a pro or a con, but I've always loved tea, or grew to love it, I should say, and was thinking about something that would be disruptive in a certain kind of way. And it came to me as, why are people unable to build their own tea blends? And there are some websites that do it online, but I wanted something that could bring the community back together in terms of coming into a store, feeling welcome, and being able to go through and touch ingredients, smell ingredients, and use your senses to build something bigger and something that's personalized for you. So that was my my concept, and a couple others that I wrote down, and I'll try and keep it short. But these were some of the food product concepts that really touched me, and I think touched a lot of the faculty and the cohort as well. One person was trying to deal with food waste. What can we do with food waste? And they were thinking of something very simple, of turning all of this food waste into a pen, where the ink and the plastic products made out of the pen weren't plastic, but were food waste. And all of a sudden, and it felt like all of a sudden, but of course, this idea had been developed. Our classmate goes up and gives a presentation on how, while trying to make food waste into ink, they had discovered that it hardened into a plastic-like substance, and was working on getting it approved to use for biomedical devices. Wow. Like implants. So this is the kind of change making capstone ideas that are coming out, and a lot of people didn't have plans to pursue it further, but I also know a lot of people who changed their mind while developing the capstone, because you put so much work into it. So
that's wonderful. So Alyssa, you're kind of in the enthralls of it. Jacob's lived it, and you're kind of in the middle of it all. So you don't have to get too specific with your sharing what you're building right now, but talk a little bit about your project and some of the other ideas that you've seen floating around.
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm very envious of Jacob, because as he said, this is where everyone's tensions, you can already tell. We get our course opens this Friday, and you can tell tensions are already high. Me and my friends from the cohort decided to not even stay in the same house this time around, because we were all like, we need to be mentally okay to give our presentation. So I can speak to that as well already, and I haven't even got there. So my project, it's really interesting. Kind of like Jacob, I started with this idea of brick and mortar, and I decided I wanted to do an Italian brew pub that pairs beer with food. Still a dream of mine, but it started to shift as I continued to develop and talk to classmates. I'm a level 1 Cicerone, so love beer. Growing up in Wisconsin, it's everything.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, so I love beer, and I knew that had to be a pivotal part of my project. It had to be what I centered around. My dad is my best friend, both my parents are, and always my inspiration. And I can remember the second I turned 21, we went to a 40 tap beer bar, and we had craft beer all night. So I really inspired it around, my dad. And once we got further in the program, at the residency, actually the second residency, where you have to decide, I decided to switch to product. And I was like, I'm going to make beer, period. I said, I want to make beer. That's it. And then I started doing my research and realized, wow, certifications, education, I have courses that I'm taking once I finish my master's for craft brewing, but I'm like, I'm not there yet. We're not there yet. So I redirected that and decided to do ice cream. being from the Midwest, I decided to pair my beer with ice cream. And that started as alcoholic ice cream. And I found that putting liquor in the ice cream was the only way I could get the ABV where I wanted it to be in a pint. But I didn't want the liquor to be the star. So I've actually, through the process of the second year, removed the liquor, actually in the process of just my sales and manufacturing courses. So the courses I just completed have removed the liquor and am reducing beers into syrups and mixing those flavors into my ice cream and creating pints of different beer inspired flavors. So still in development. I'm very excited for recipe testing this summer. So
that's super cool. I think that's awesome. I love just the attention to detail and just how the ideas develop. Like both of you start off with, like a kernel, and it just kind of grows into, what's real, what's realistic, and what the capabilities are. Now, ultimately for you, Alyssa, in seeing this process, from start to finish, so for almost to finish, how do you see the classes you took over the course of this last semester and the first semester of the second year leading to, if you wanted to go back to creating your beer line, do you see the skill sets, transferring in this exercise of, going through the business playbook? Is it applicable to, businesses you'd want to start in the future potentially?
Oh, without a doubt. I was actually speaking with our professor for manufacturing, Helene York. She is incredible. And I get emails from her every once in a while that say, thinking of you. And then, a whole story about something that she might have seen that related to my product. And recently, actually, she had just sent me one of these the day of our finals. And it was her at an ice cream shop. And she was like, I can't help but think maybe this would be good for you. It's an idea that was already in my head, and to hear someone kind of confirm that was really great. In those classes, I have no doubt in my head, if I left and decided to do a brick and mortar ice cream shop versus selling my ice cream on store shelves, I could achieve it. And same with creating a line for beer. If I went into a brewery or a brew pub, there is no doubt in my mind, I know how to navigate FDA regulations now. I know how to navigate USDA regulations. I know how to find all of these different things that if you had asked me 2 years ago, how would you start? I would have looked at you and said, what? So
Yep.
definitely grown.
I've always sort of heard and described it as, you get to build a business idea, but in an incubation period. It's sort of incubated the whole time, because not only do you have your own ideas developing, but you have input from other people in your cohort and the faculty, obviously, which we'll get to in a second. But it's really about developing and harnessing an idea and taking shape into a variety of different things. So I love both of your stories. I think they're so cool, and just an exciting element to have working into the future. So best of luck to you, Alyssa, on your upcoming presentation. I hope it goes well. I hope sacrificing time with friends is worth it at that part. And Jacob, congratulations to you on starting the dream. That's a big step. So we're really proud of you as a graduate, and excited to see what comes next. So we'll get into our next question, which we kind of set up a little bit, but talking about the faculty, what are they like, and how accessible are they to you over the course of the week? Is it a situation, we've kind of touched on a little bit, but how much access do you have to them on a regular basis? And we'll start with you, Jacob.
Yeah, sounds great. The faculty are by far some of the most knowledgeable people in the food industry. They are collected from far and wide. It almost feels like that. And I feel like one of the reasons that they're able to give so much time is because of the online aspect. And it's amazing how accessible they are, for the whole program being done online. For example, the design thinking for food professor, Kylie Wawak, I'm guessing she still does, but during my time, she lived in London. And so her hours are almost the exact opposite of where I'm at on the West Coast. And even then, you're getting feedback, you're getting responses to emails. and even meetings aren't turned down. So the faculty are amazing, a knowledgeable collection of people who really give a lot of their time, despite the fact that they have tons of other things going on. And I think the program couldn't be anywhere close to what it is without the amazing faculty that are on board.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Alyssa, you can talk to a little bit of the same, but an area that I'd like you to expand on is, just kind of talking about, their support to you, like the feedback that you get on assignments, and just kind of talk a little bit about, how they help. You know what I mean? Like if you have a question or if you turn in an assignment that, needs to be better in some capacity, like talk a little bit about the sort of the feedback interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for this particular question, the best example I can give is Helene York for manufacturing, and the feedback was paragraphs. Not every professor did paragraphs, but she specifically things were graded within a day or two. Sometimes even the next morning, I would have a grade already with a paragraph of feedback. It was pretty incredible. That's one extreme of a professor who's very, very on top of it. But even the other extreme is, you usually have feedback within a few days of your assignment. The feedback, there's at least a couple sentences of please improve on this, or let's fix that. I just turned in my finals for sales, and my professor went through it in every area. He gave me feedback, and he said, let's push this further. Let's figure out a way to do this. And he's actually an advisor for our Capstone course coming up. So it's really exciting to know that someone has understanding already, but they really do take the time. They want to do this. They have other jobs. This isn't their sole focus. They want to be here and they want to help you. And I think that's the most important thing to remember as a student, is that all of these people are choosing to help me grow and help advance my career in some capacity, and they're all just a wealth of knowledge, every single one of them.
That's fantastic. Perfect answers from both of you. I love that. I love hearing about the faculty. I mean, like I said, I went through the undergraduate program at CIA, so I know the chefs really well, and gotten to meet a few of these educators. So they're special people in so many ways. So that's fantastic. And so we have kind of our last formal question that we'll dive into. It's a little bit long, but I think they're both really important pieces to the question. And we'll start with you, Alyssa. You talk a little bit about ultimately what made you choose this program. I know you talked a little bit about the beginning, but then developing into how has this investment impacted your life, and is it developing your future in the world of food?
Yeah, absolutely. So being from the Midwest and even choosing CIA originally was a lot. 1,000 miles is a lot of distance from everything you've grown up. I'm very fortunate. My dad grew up in Millbrook, New York. So just a mere 25-30 minutes from CIA. So I knew the area okay from a few visits, but being there as an associate's and a bachelor's is really what drove me to choose this master's particularly. You said it already. The staff at CIA is incredible. I still, text with chefs that I had that were on friendly level post-graduation, and am in contact with so many of my educators. And this program was something that I knew would help push me through doors. The jobs I was looking at, a lot of them required a lot of experience or a lot of education. And we find that in the food industry now, if you don't want to work in the kitchen necessarily, when it comes to different types of jobs outside of that, you have to have that education or that experience. And I think that this program as an investment is going to help me with that. Everywhere I've looked and everyone I've talked to, when you say you're getting your master's from the Culinary Institute of America, it's oh, really? What is that? What are you doing? What are you learning? Tell me about it. And I think that's something that I can speak to with my cohort too, is our very first residency. I spoke with Kathy and just said, is it okay if me and one of my fellow cohorts, who is also a CIA graduate, we were like, can we just tell them what, this means? And we did that at our residency, and we gave this speech, and everyone was like, wow. And then we got to our second residency and they were like, you can't even begin to explain how much I've learned from just having the name of CIA attached to me. And I think it's just really incredible that the school alone opens doors that you never thought a name could open. So it's really incredible.
That's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And Jacob, can you tell a little bit more about what brought you to our program and ultimately what the investment has meant for you and your future?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being a hospitality teacher in high school, when COVID hit, everything, but everyone's world shifted. I turned from being in the kitchen with students every day to being almost like a Blue Apron delivery, trying to get students to cook. And at that time, I knew now might be a time to further my education. And I didn't know what that meant. I just started looking up different programs. But I, of course, knew the CIA name. That is the one thing that stuck out to me, finding this program and ultimately finding that there's nothing else like it. They're really, feel free to do your own research. There's nothing else like this program that exists. And so hopping into that, thinking, this will help in my education career. It's, a master's is great. It pushes me up on the pay scale, to be honest. So I was like, oh, that's great. Let alone did I know 2 years later, I would be literally living on top of the cafes right below me right now. So literally living on top of the cafe, trying to implement all of these lessons I've learned in business and branding and problem solving and leadership to put it towards an actual business. It means the world to me. And knowing that one piece of feedback that you'll see a lot when you enter the program is go further, go deeper. How can you change more? How can you do more with your ideas? That is something that I'm going to be taking forward with me forever. How can I be changing more? How can I use the cafe to help people? How can I use it to launch, something else in the future? And so it really is a huge investment, not just in terms of having those certifications and having the masters, but an investment in yourself and, being able to use everything you learn with every step that you take in the future.
That's wonderful. I'm about to ask you to give us a tour, but I won't. But that's
yeah. But, unfortunately, we're under a little bit of construction. So, but hopefully soon, literally the whole CIA family is invited. So,
well, I hope to see videos. That's amazing, and congratulations to both of you. On taking the leap to start this journey, and for you, Jacob, completing it, and Alyssa on the verge. It's a great undertaking, especially, managing, real life and work and all the things that come about. It's courageous, and, you both should be very proud. And, we're honored to have you as, a graduate from CIA on both sides, Alyssa from the undergraduate and soon from this, and Jacob from our graduate program. So what I'd like to do next is, open up the floor for any of our audience members. If you'd like to share a question or ask a specific question, please feel free to use the Q&A feature that's available on the Zoom chat, and just type that question in, and if we can address it here, we will. If there's any questions that we can't get to, I'll definitely follow up with you directly after the webinar is concluded. But there's one question that did come through that I can kind of pose to both of you, and we'll start with you, Alyssa. Is what's one thing you wish you knew that you wish you had known before coming into the program that you didn't know?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I guess I just wish I knew how different this was going to be. I'm sure Jacob can attest to coming from a culinary background. You have this idea in your head of what our industry is and what we do. And coming into this, I had this perception of what this program would be, especially going to CIA for my first 2 degrees. And then I came in and I was completely different than what I thought. You really push boundaries, and when I went to school, sustainability was not even a conversation.
Hmm.
And that I graduated in 2019 with my bachelor's. And then even coming back just 3 years later, into the program, or 2 years later into the program, it was all about sustainability, all about pushing the envelope, all about what we were going to do next. And you never know what you're going to get into. And, for future students, the curriculum could focus on something completely different when they come in. And I think just having more of an open mind when I started, because I had to push past my wall in the beginning of, this is my expectation, this is what I know, this is what I believe in. And, I wish I had gone into it a little more open-minded at the beginning. Now you could tell me anything and I would believe you. But back then, I wish I guess that's probably the best answer. I just wish I knew to have more of an open mind coming in.
That's a great answer. And Jacob, how about you?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind, and this is fortunately a piece of advice that I did get from a previous graduate at the start all those years ago. It feels like a million, but only two and a half years ago. But this is something that I would want to pass along, is save everything. We were fortunate to have some graduates come and talk to us during our first residency virtually, and someone literally pulled out binders worth of information. If that's how you want to do it, save it that way. If you want to do it digitally, if you want to, but this is information that you will be using, and I still use, and I think 8 months out of the program. This is stuff that you want to be going back to on a very practical level, but this information is good forever. Make sure that you're keeping copies, you're keeping records, you have all of these items, because there will be a time when you're out, and I hope that you have the same experience, Alyssa, where you're like, oh my gosh, there was something in design thinking, or I had this idea, or I wrote this down in this assignment, and you're going to want to go back and look at it, or you're going to want to go back and view a lecture video, because you're going to remember something someone said. So it doesn't quite answer the question, but if there's one thing I want to pass along, that would be it.
That's perfect advice, and I think that both of you answered that question beautifully. And we didn't get any additional questions from our audience at this point. So what I'd like to do now is just share with everybody, if they have questions about the program and they would like to learn more, please feel free to contact me directly. My name is Robert Tremblay. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions. I work with all three of our master's degree programs, but most notably our food business. I've been working with this program since 2019, so it's been under my belt for a long time, and I worked very closely with both Jacob and Alyssa, so glad that you all made it, and I'm glad it's been a great experience for you both. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to email me directly. But I really just want to thank, Alyssa and Jacob so much for joining us today. It's so imperative that we get to share your experiences with future students of the CIA, and with this program especially. So, your feedback and your anecdotes and your experiences and your stories, they're all, so crucial to the success of this program and our future students. So I thank you both again, and I wish you both a great rest of your night. All right.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.